Hello, welcome to another video where today I figured we'd go berry picking because this year has been great for wild edibles, specifically wild fruits. There is just such an abundance this year. So I figured it would be great to pick as many as I can, see how many I can get, and then at the end of the video turn them into a syrup that can be then mixed with seltzer water to make a refreshing wild berry soda. Although before we go any further, let's get something out of the way. This is not a tutorial on how to identify wild edibles. This is not enough information to go out and just randomly start collecting berries to cook up and turn into a soda. Please, if you're going to go out and collect wild edibles, especially multiple different species, make sure you're well versed on how to identify what you are harvesting. I do have some videos talking about the identification of some of these wild edibles, and I'll link them down in the description. However, I do want to stress that that is only a starting point. One video is never enough information to learn how to properly identify a wild edible. I'm just a random dude on the internet who's eaten wild edibles since I was a kid, so yes, my track record is fairly good. I'm still around, but please look at other material and sources, because I'm not perfect. I'm gonna miss things, and you need to be 100% sure that what you're eating is edible if you were to repeat what I'm going to do now. I figure I'll primarily be picking wine berries, as they are a non-native and possibly invasive species that you don't want much more of, and the birds don't like them as much. Although I will also be picking other berries when I can find them. There's just such an excess right now that any that I don't pick will probably just rot. I'm not going to show picking every berry. There are a lot of bushes around, but I'll show some highlights, and I'll definitely show the progress as we go along. Whenever you're picking berries for something like syrup, jam, or a pie filling, you should always err on the side of it being underripe. You can always add sugar if it's not sweet enough, and the underripe berries add sourness, which is quite nice. And too many overripe berries with spoiled flavors might ruin whatever you're making. Here's some Allegheny blackberries, which I normally don't like, but since we're going to be cooking this, they should be quite good, actually. Well, I'm sure I missed some, but I'm on a bit of a time crunch, and that looks pretty good for now. Gathering some more wine berries now. It's unfortunate I can't really show you picking these. I thought about actually putting the GoPro on, but there's no way you would see anything. You would basically just see whatever you see right now, which is probably a blurry wineberry plant. You really have to sort of get in deep here and pick. There's maybe a few I can get at a surface level that I could have shown you, but this is with having some random plant hold up my entire harvest, and if this spills, well, that's not going to be fun trying to collect them all again. I'd probably just have to start over. Here's some really nice dewberries. They're like giant blackberries that taste like the sweetest apple you've ever tasted. These are also, in my experience, the most common wild edible, besides wine berries perhaps, that you'll find perfectly ripe. Probably because they're so low to the ground. The birds don't want to risk it getting attacked by a weasel or fox or something. Well, look at that. There's even some black raspberries around. Not sure how many I'm gonna get, but I'll throw them in. All right, I've got one more place to check. Most likely just gonna be wine berries, but this is starting to look like quite the haul. Well, I was not expecting this. Look at the size of these wine berries. Let's get a comparison. Yeah, those are some big ones. Looks like I saved the best for last, because there are just so many wine berries here, and they're quite large. Which doesn't really make that much sense, because they're being shaded out by reeds. Well, that's quite the haul, and that's it for the berries. But believe it or not, we're not done yet. These rose petals are quite good and quite edible, so let's add a few of them. And speaking of flowers, how about some Queen Anne's lace? You can make soda from this all on its own, and I'm curious to see what the effect on the flavor is going to be. There we go. There's the final haul, and if that isn't some eye candy, I do not know what is. And it goes without saying, but the smell coming out of this box is incredible. Now, the first thing you always do is wash it, because this is wild. There's going to be bugs in it, especially picking as many berries as this. Even though it's going to be annoying to get the flowers to not leave when you try to drain the water out of this, you do have to wash it because there's always something in there that you're really happy you didn't leave in to boil. I typically leave this sitting here for about a minute or two before draining the water. Now, since we're making a syrup, it's time to add sugar, and a lot of sugar. You're basically making a simple syrup that is flavored with these fruits and flowers. You don't really want to rely on the fruits to bring too much of the sweetness. Now, a bit different from last time, I'm not going to try and boil these per se. I'm really going to just put it on low heat to get the sugar to dissolve and everything to come together. I don't want to destroy a lot of these delicate flavors with high heat cooking. A little bit of water is also good to help it get started. Now, if you really want to preserve these delicate flavors, you've got to get to mashing. If you just sort of let this boil to the point where they soften, then it's just going to get too hot and a lot of those flavors are going to be destroyed. But if you mash them up first, it should help it along and get it into a mush that you can strain the juice out of fairly early on without getting too hot. If you're on low but you still start to see wisps of steam coming up, just turn off the heat. You've already got it hot enough that the sugar should do the rest. Pretty soon it'll look pretty well mashed up. You could probably strain this now, but I always like to make sure all the fruits are real mashed up. You could also probably do this without any heat, just leave them in the sugar and wait until they weep out all their liquid. But needless to say, these are wild fruits, and besides the fact that that strategy would take quite a long time, I always find it's reassuring to expose them to heat that would kill pathogens. As far as I understand it, wild fruits are no less clean than cultivated ones. I mean, there are several insect parts allowed in every chocolate bar, but I still do like to take extra precautions like this. But I digress. Let's strain this and see what we get. You should also definitely squeeze whatever you can out of this pulp. Wouldn't want to waste any of this stuff that's trapped in here. Over 3/4 of a cup. That's not a bad yield at all. Almost 200 milliliters. Now it's time to taste for sweetness. I'd be willing to bet this needs more sugar. It's plenty sweet enough on its own, but if you're going to mix this with soda, yeah, it definitely needs a little bit more sugar. I added about enough sugar to bring it up to 225 milliliters, and that was about perfect. And now for the final taste test, let's mix it all together. I'm going to add about that much syrup, and then I always add a little bit of seltzer at first, and then swirl it around to get it all dissolved. And now once that's done, fill it all the way up to the top. Well, the color is just awesome. I don't think I could have done any better on that front. All right, let's give it a try. I definitely added a reasonable amount of seltzer to the point where it's just a background flavor, but it's good. I can't sort of pick out any flavors where I would say like, ooh, that's the wineberry, ooh, that's the Allegheny blackberry, ooh, that's the carrot flower, but it's quite good. And you know, I wouldn't change a thing. It has such a... It has the flavor I was smelling in that box, but sort of toned down a little bit. Maybe I'll try one that's a little more syrup, less seltzer. Let's give that a try. Well, that was good. Definitely the best configuration if you want a refreshing drink if you were out doing stuff in the sun. But let's mix something that's a little bit more to the tune of me tasting all those flavors. That much, and then It's liquidy enough. I think I can probably just pour it in without mixing. Talk about red. The color on this stuff is just awesome. And I think it's primarily the blackberries. I don't think the wineberries would make this striking of a color. Alright, let's give this one a try. Definitely on the sweeter side. Very good. I do get a little bit of that carrot flower. Yeah, that was a good addition. I don't know what the rose petals brought to it. Yeah, I can't pick them out at all. But I do think that carrot flower plus those berries gives it a really nice flavor. I think at the very least, the blackberries and dewberries gave it its really nice color. The wineberries are the primary component of the flavor. I do taste a lot of that very sour, orangey note, which goes really well with the blackberries, I think. And then I do occasionally get a little bit of that carrot flower. I think I would have even added a little bit more. The rose I don't think brings anything to the party, at least not in the amount that I added. Made it look nice though. Overall, if I had to choose between the two, if I was just sitting out on the deck or inside, I would definitely pick this one. It's just so much more flavorful. But I do think very dilute. There is still some flavor there. And if you were, say, working outside and then came in and had a glass of this, it would be really nice. It would really hit the spot. If you didn't want to restrict yourself, you could also add mint to this. It would probably do some serious wonders. You could also garnish with it as well, but I wanted to keep it purely wild. Although, I could have definitely garnished with a little bit of carrot flower. Anyway, that's all for today. As always, I do hope you learned something, enjoyed, and I wish you the best. Till next time.